Hello and welcome back to the Life Uncovered podcast in for another episode. Before we jump into the episode and looking at Beckie's life, I just wanted to say a couple of things. As I went through Beckie's podcast and we spoke together, there was a verse in the Bible that really reminded me of Beckie's life and Beckie's story, especially on the topic that she's talking about. And it says this, it's a letter in the New Testament. It's called Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And it says this, it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." And life is a gift, isn't it? Life is precious, life is amazing, but there are also difficult times in life, and there are things that we go through which don't really make sense. There are situations that are terrible, there are situations that are horrible, and the Bible says this is a result of sin, not because God is punishing us, or God is trying to teach us a lesson or anything like that. The Bible says that all the bad things that happen in the world is a result of sin. And in fact, the Bible verse says that for those who trust in Jesus, for those who can call themselves a Christian, that in all things, the good, the bad, and the difficult times, God works in these things for our good. And this is what Beckii shows in this certain situation that she talks about in her life. And she can see now that in the midst of those things, God worked for her good and for his glory. And that didn't make the situation easy that Beckii went through. But she knew that even in the hard times, God was with her, and God was working in these situations for her good, because it's a promise that God makes in the Bible for those who've put their trust in him. And I've been asked by several people recently, why do people turn to religion? Why do people turn, especially to Christianity? Why do people turn to Jesus? And I think a big reason for this is because of this truth, that God is there in the middle of our difficult situations, that God is there in the chaos in our lives at times. And in every podcast so far, people have explained this, that they've felt God's presence, God's help, and God's love in the good times of their lives, but also in the really chaotic, difficult times, and especially in the difficult times, they've felt God's presence. And this is what Christmas is all about as we jump into this Christmas special, that Jesus came into the world, into the mess of this world, so that he could be with us, that we can know him and we can feel this promise for ourselves, that even in the difficult times, God works all things for our good and for his glory. So as we jump into this podcast to listen to Beckie's life, please bear that in mind as we go through Beckie's story. And as you're going to see, we won't be in this podcast studio. We're going to be somewhere a little bit different. So I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncovered. We're in a very different setting. We are no longer in the podcast studio. I have travelled to my sister's home for a Christmas special. Here's the beautiful Christmas tree.
Decorated by me.
Absolutely, and it's absolutely amazing.
Thanks.
Look at the star and how perfectly upright it is.
Can they see the star?
I don't know.
Let's just pretend. It's the best star you'll ever see in your life.
We'll have to edit it and put my face up there or something, or your head.
No.
I don't have those skills, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, welcome. This is Beckii. This is my sister.
I don't know where to wave.
This one, or this one. You can wave at any of them. But yeah, this is Beckii. We're going to just go through Beckie's life, specifically look at a situation in Beckie's life where her faith was tested and her faith grew, her faith in Jesus. And we're going to look at that in a bit of depth, and we're going to look at the sort of the theme of forgiveness and how she managed to sort all that out. But we're going to go through that a little bit later because we don't want to go in so heavy. And we're going to do a Christmas get to know your guest.
Okay.
So we're going to get to know you in a Christmassy way.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Are you sure? You ready?
I think so.
Okay. So, Christmas-related questions to start with. What did your Christmas day look like as a child?
Magical.
Explain the timeline of the day.
So I would go in. I would go in and wake Calvin up, and then we'd go and wake Naomi up.
At what time?
Probably like 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 or 5. And then we would have to wait a bit, and then we'd go and wake Mum and Dad up. And then we'd do our stockings, and then we'd go down the stairs, and Dad would do his bit of acting for the year and pretend that Santa hadn't been. And that we had no presents, and then obviously we did have presents. And then we'd go to church, come home, have food. That's it.
And
Bish,
open
bash, bosh.
presents.
Open presents.
The best thing about Christmas Day at our household was the food.
100%.
Mum cooked like 4 different types of meats, stuffing. roast
She set the
potatoes.
bar
Oh,
really high.
It's too high.
It's too
We
high.
just can't measure up to
I'm
it.
doing one meat this year, and it's ham.
I like it. Are we going to boil it in Coke?
No, I might just get sliced ham from a ham sandwich.
Yeah, that's the way. Okay, so the question number 2. What is your favourite Christmas tradition?
Oh, we've started one with the kids where they go and buy a bauble each Christmas, so they get a new bauble every year. I like that one. I like the Christmas Eve pajamas and going to church on Christmas Day.
I like it. That's very good. I like it a lot.
Thanks.
If you hear noise in the background, that is Beckie's child, but that's okay. We are inclusive.
Yeah.
I don't know why I say
Flexible.
we're inclusive. But if she runs on, that's okay as well. I think she's downloading something.
She is, yeah.
Question number 3.
Okay.
What is your favourite Christmas movie?
The Santa Claus with Tim Allen.
Have you watched the series on Disney?
It's absolute trash.
What?
The second season is trash. The first season, yes.
Well, me and Han watched movie 1 and 2 when we were like, oh, there's a third one, is there?
Yeah, Jack Frost.
Yeah, so we watched the third one and we were like, oh, so good. And then there's a series.
Mm-hmm.
So we watched the first series and we were like, it's trash, but at the same time, it's really good.
I liked the first season, but the second season was just
it's really
grasping at
storyline.
straws. Yeah.
Really storyline. If you've not watched it, Disney Plus, go and
Yeah.
watch it. Christmas quick-fire questions. So these
Okay.
have got to be quick-fire.
Okay.
So, Christmas away or Christmas at home?
Home.
Real tree or artificial tree?
Real.
All I Want for Christmas Is You or Last Christmas? Do you want me to give you a rendition? All I want
Last
for
Christmas.
Okay, I'll stop singing. Last Christmas. Decorate the tree or wrapping gifts?
Wrapping gifts.
Mulled wine or hot chocolate?
Mulled wine.
Oh.
A non-alcoholic
Ah,
mulled wine from IKEA.
that's boring.
Hashtag IKEA.
Christmas dinner or Christmas leftovers?
Oh, Christmas leftovers with cheese and crackers.
Are you all right there, Mimi? Are you singing? If you can hear that, it's beautiful. So leftovers.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Cold gravy. Oh, nothing better. I used to get crackers with butter and dip it in cold gravy.
You're vile. You're
Still do.
disgusting.
Elf or Home Alone?
Can I say neither?
That's
I
controversial.
can't stand Elf.
What about Home Alone?
I'll give it a solid 5 out of 10. But Santa Claus.
You're a disgrace to the
Sorry.
family. Christmas jumper or Christmas PJs?
PJs.
We used to get PJs every year, didn't we? New PJs. And I remember your announcement of Sebastian.
Yeah, we put a onesie or a vest in the Christmas tree.
And
when
we
we were
all
pregnant.
wear matching pajamas.
Yeah,
and
that
I was
was
like,
really
why on
cute.
earth am I sat here wearing matching pajamas? And then I realised why.
Yeah, that was really cute.
Yeah.
Props to me.
Props to you. Playing games or watching movies?
Playing games. I like cheating at games and winding
You're
people
definitely your father's daughter.
up. Yeah, I love it.
Monopoly. I
I
remember
love Monopoly.
we were at the Hinton's house playing Monopoly, and Paul would come along and he'd go to me, a gift from God.
Yeah.
And gave me like £20 to keep me in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
It's the best. I love cheating at Monopoly.
Dad's always the banker and he always cheats.
Yeah.
He always slips himself money. And if you're on his good side, he might slip you money. But then he's also really annoyed when he's winning and then you cheat to win. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's what happens in our household at Christmas. All the games, great banter.
Falling out and cheating is a tradition.
Well, that's
One of my favourite traditions.
that's every family tradition. So yeah, there's our Christmas related questions. Hopefully you've got to know Beckii in a more simpler way.
I am quite simple.
But you are my sister, so I'm quite simple too. So let's get into your life and looking at the different things. Here's a David Tennant pillow, by the way.
You.
So if you do this, it goes away. If you do this, it comes alive.
This is a Christmas present last year from Matt. This is my favourite Christmas present. It came to church with me on Christmas morning when they said, Has anyone got any presents? Meaning the kids. I got up as a fully grown adult and presented my David Tennant pillow. David Tennant, if you're watching this.
Yeah, David Tennant's tuned into the Life and Cover podcast. Okay, some questions. So, I know your upbringing because I was brought up in the same home, but other people don't. So paint us a picture of sort of your upbringing. Tell us where you're from, what your early childhood was like, what your family life is like, and also tell us a little bit about your sort of experience or understanding of the Christian faith.
Okay, so...
If I've asked too many questions, just keep going back to me now.
So we were brought up in a Christian home. We lived in Somerset for 3 years of my life. We then moved to Leeds. Whoop, whoop. Leeds. And it was in Leeds, I think. I became a Christian at 4, which is ridiculously early and everything. I was coming home from somewhere and I saw a rainbow in the sky. And I said to Mum and Dad, I don't want to go to hell. And then they basically talked me through how I won't go to hell. And I wasn't a perfect child, even though I became a Christian at 4. Obviously didn't grasp the gospel as much as I could, like as a 4-year-old. So yeah, then I went to school. We went to C of E schools, but they weren't very C of E.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else did you ask me?
Yeah. What was your family life like? So paint a picture of what our parents were like.
Our parents are the best parents ever, and I'm not just saying that because they paid me before I came on. They literally are. They're the most supportive parents I think anyone could ever ask for. And as we go into talking about whatever we're going to talk about, you'll see that God was present and God had his hand on the situation. But our parents are they're just amazing.
Yeah. And I think that's testament to what you said about you becoming a Christian at an early age. I think they taught us, not just taught us, but showed us what Jesus' love was like, and the love that they experienced. So I think that's a massive influence on both of us, isn't it? Of why we became Christians at such a young age and was brought up knowing sort of more about the Christian faith. So that's what our family life was like. That's sort of our your early understanding of Christian faith, but it's sort of similar to mine because we're a brother and sister. So even though you had a good childhood and we've got great parents and all that, growing up into teenage years was quite difficult for you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Can you share with us a little bit about what happened to you in high school? Share how this experience affected you, sort of emotionally, affected your Christian faith. Paint us a picture of that period in your life and go into as much detail as you want about what happened to you, and then we'll sort of derive some more questions from that.
Okay, so we'll start with primary school.
Yeah.
Primary school, I experienced bullying quite early on. I think it was year 4 until the end of primary school I was bullied. So going into high school, I had a very, very low self-esteem and low self-worth. And then I went into high school and had quite a big friendship group. Like I could have been one of the popular people in school, believe it or not. And then I remember one of the girls who went on to become one of my best friends at school. She, I love telling the story. She was getting taken the mick out of for liking Doctor Who, and it was my friendship group, and I was like, I don't really want to join in because I like Doctor Who and I know how it feels to be bullied. And they were being really, really horrible to her. And I took a stand and I was like, nah, I'm not putting up with this. And I then said, well, I like Doctor Who. And then the bullying turned on me. But that's how I came into this friendship group. There was 3 other girls and we were kind of the outcasts. And so from end of year 7 till year 8, that was our group. And there was a girl in the group who was a friend. And she later came out to me as a lesbian. And as a 12, 13-year-old, believe it or not, back when we were growing up, you didn't really have much experience with
Mm-hmm.
the homosexuality and trans and everything. And then she said, we were on the stairs in the high school, and she was like, I'm a lesbian and I fancy you. And I was like, oh, whoa. Again, never experienced any type of homosexuality, never expected her to turn around and say she fancied me.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going, well, I like boys, so no. And I walked away relatively calm from that. And then somehow someone else found out that it was happening, and a rumour went around the school, and people were saying that I was the lesbian, people were saying this, and it was just... So I burst out crying and went to the head of year, and that's when this next chapter started. She would send notes saying that she was gonna kill herself. She was going to go down to the train tracks and wait for a train. She would break out pencil sharpeners, like the little plastic pencil sharpeners had the metal in it, and she would slit her wrists, and she would come and find me and say it was my fault. This went on for months. It was relentless. There was a point where she threatened to beat me up with a hockey stick, and I remember everyone in the courtyard like surrounded me to stop me from getting beaten up, and all I wanted was my sister, like our big sister Naomi, and I was like, someone get Naomi, she'll sort this out. And I remember my friends running to find her, and then seeing her was just like, oh. So yeah, that was
a situation that you'd faced.
Yeah.
So how long was that for?
Year 8, from year 8 onwards, but it was very intense year 8, beginning of year 9.
And obviously you said it was relentless, and it was all the time, it was every day. How did that affect you emotionally first? How did that affect your sort of mindset and what you thought of yourself and the rest?
Well, I didn't have any self-confidence. I had the worst self-esteem. And I remember overhearing Mum and Dad talking about how they hadn't, I'm not going to cry, they hadn't seen me smile like I used to. And I'm not that happy little girl that they knew. And that affected me, because I was like, I don't want to disappoint Mum and Dad. I want to be this happy person that they know. So yeah, emotionally it affected me. I didn't want to go to school. I was never suicidal, and I'd never self-harmed, nothing like that. But I hated myself. I hated when I looked in the mirror. I hated what I looked like. And as a teenager, you want to feel attractive, and everything was very much my looks.
Yeah.
Because my personality is top notch. It's not changed. But yeah, so my
But in that time it did, didn't it? In that time, those thoughts that you had about yourself also affected your personality to
100%.
The point where even I remember how low you were, and I think I remember that comment from Mum and Dad about you not being that smiley girl anymore. Me and you have always been, all three of us have been really close as siblings, and me and you have been really close as well. You used to dress me up as a woman, as a little girl.
We were mistaken for
together.
twins quite a lot.
Yeah.
When we went to church as a Nazarene.
Yeah.
So.
And I remember that period, and I remember how that affected you. So that not only affected, the way you look, but the misconception you had on the way that you looked also affected your personality, didn't it, at the time? Tell us a little bit about the person that made you become in that period. Give us some examples of what you'd be like.
I was just really moody. I didn't want any affection. I know I took it out on Dad quite a lot, and even and to this day I still feel really bad, because me and Dad were close when I was younger, and we're so close now, and we were close in that stage, but I did take a lot of my anger out on Dad. So yeah, to be honest, I can't really remember a lot, because I think I've blocked it out. I've given it to God, and I mean, I know we'll go into that, but I've given it to God, and I don't have much memory of how I was. So yeah, that's all I remember, just being angry. And
So give us what was your sort of Christian faith like at that point? You know, a young teenager going through a sort of an identity crisis, really. What was your sort of feelings and thoughts towards God in that?
It was non-existent. Yeah, it was non-existent, and you know, in like if you go to a youth group or something, people will say, "How often will you tell your friends that you're a Christian?" Who in this room would say that they could tell their friends they're a Christian? And I was like, "Yeah, 100%. Everyone in school knows I'm a Christian," but I wasn't a Christian. Like, well, I was, but I wasn't living it out. I'd go to church, and that was it. I'd go to school and I'd swear. I had the worst. You probably don't know. I had the worst potty mouth. Every other word would be a swear word. I'd steal things from school, and I was awful. I'd skive school, but I wouldn't skive school in the sense where some people that I know today have skived school. I would pretend I was poorly, and I remember setting alarms in the night to wake myself up to pretend to be sick so mum and dad wouldn't send me to school. So all of that is dishonesty. There's the swearing, there's the stealing. So I wasn't acting as a Christian. So my faith was non-existent at that point.
And your thoughts and feelings towards God were like what?
Like, why?
Yeah, why is this happening to me?
Yeah, why am I attracting this person, and why is it affecting me as much? If I'm meant to be a Christian, why is this bullying affecting me as much as it is?
Like, would you have asked the question, where are you? What's going on? Why aren't you in the middle of all this? So as time went on, you stopped going to school.
Yeah.
You refused to go to school. Tell us a little bit about
that. I split my years in half. So the second year of year 9, so after Christmas, our granddad passed away, who was like a big character. And the bullying got worse, and I just said to mum and dad, I'm not going to school. Like, you can't make me. And as I said in the beginning, they're very supportive parents. They were like, well, if whatever you want to do, that's fine. We will support you. So I want to say it was 2 weeks off school. No, not Blippy. To all the parents out there, no to Blippy. So I took 2 weeks off, thought, yes, this is it. I've escaped. I'm not going back. And the second week, the head teacher rang and he said, she needs to come back to school or we will be taking legal action, basically. And mum and dad sat me down and they said, right, we'll look at moving schools, we'll look at homeschooling, we'll look at whatever. What do you want to do? And I said, I'm not going back. I said, you cannot make me go back to school if they're not going to kick her out and sort this out. So I remember being in the car and battling in my head with God, saying, you're not making, this is my plan. I said, you've allowed this to happen to me, so I'm going to take action. I'm taking control. I'm not going back. And the whole way there, it was a 40-minute drive to school. The whole way there, I was like, I'm not going. And my heart was racing and I was sweating. I'm not a very confrontational person. So I got into the head teacher's office and I sat down and he went, right, Beckii. And I just felt an overwhelming sense of calm. My heart stopped racing. I stopped sweating. And I just went, I'll come back. I said, I'll come back on Monday. And as the words were leaving my mouth, I was like, what are you saying? Like, what are you saying? You have the opportunity to never go back to school ever again. And I knew it was God. I knew it was God, like, nah, this isn't right. This is my plan. You've got to stick this out. And I remember looking at Dad and he just went, because the whole way there I was like, not going. And he just turned to the head teacher and he went, so what are you going to do then? Like, what are you going to do?
I've just seen him and he said to me that, again, this just shows how supportive he is, that he had looked up all these different places that you could have gone to and found the place that you're going to talk about and presented it to him and said, so what are you going to pay for this? Are you going to do it?
I didn't know that. Well, I might have known that, but yeah.
Probably blocked it out. But that's what he said he did.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So then that happened, and from that, the head teacher arranged for me to have a day release from school. So I was allowed a day release from school on a Thursday to go and work with horses, which something that I enjoyed. It was a passion.
So Mimi has joined us.
Yeah.
So there you are. So yeah, going back to the placement. Those placements are really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone who's listening to this who might be going through a similar situation and may have an opportunity to do something like that, what is it that did for you to improve the situation that you were facing?
It just gave me another outlet. I'd go to school Monday to Wednesday, and then I'd have this day where I could just escape from it all, and just become who I used to be through the horses. As weird as that sounds. And then I'd go back into school on a Friday, and I'd feel like I had the confidence to take on the day because I'd had that day out.
Mm-hmm. It was a part of it was sort of like therapy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Through like animals and through because it was riding with the disabled, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you started taking lessons and stuff, and
yeah, when I first started, I would help in the disabled classes where I would lead the horses round, and then eventually it went on to a 1 or 2 year career when I left school, where I was teaching children about Mimi's age how to ride.
And during this period, was that bullying still going on?
It wasn't as bad.
Wasn't as bad because of the situation that happened with the school. The school started to actually decide to do something about it.
The school split. It was almost like Hogwarts in year 10. They split us into houses, and it was made that she was on a completely different class. She was in a completely different section of the school, and the only time we'd see each other was fire drills. I remember them, and playtime. But
Playtime.
But I would normally try and stay inside.
So, looking back on that experience that you had, how did God help you through it?
I think in the moment I didn't see it. I don't want to seem, especially if there is somebody out there that's the same age as I was, or even now going through it, I don't want to seem like this, I was such a holy teenager and I saw God working through everything and I relied on God. And because for me, that wasn't the case. Like I would lie and say that it was if I could, but it wasn't the case for me. I know now that it was God, but then I was like oblivious to it. So for now I know that it was God's will, and it was God's hand, and it was God pushing me in the right direction. And I had the support of our church, and then I had the support of our youth club, and again that was another escape. It was something that I hated going to because I don't like people and I don't like big crowds, and at the time there was a big group, but it was something that mum more than dad, because dad, I've got him wrapped around my little finger. Mum was like, you're going to these weekends away with your youth group, and in the moment it was the worst thing ever, but looking back it was like
it was an escape for you.
I needed it.
So you said that you managed to forgive this person. So this person who harassed you on a daily basis, this person who contributed to making you have a low self-esteem and to look at yourself in a negative way with your physical image, you said that you managed to forgive this person. How on earth have you managed to forgive this person? Why have you forgiven this person?
It took a lot of years. So when I left school, this is a completely different topic, which might be podcast part 2. But we had a pastor who came from America, and the first week that he was there, he was talking about forgiveness. And I remember he had a paper shredder on the stage, and he was a very charismatic performer. I wouldn't say a pastor, he was a performer. And he said, if there's anyone here that is struggling with forgiveness, come forward and get a piece of paper and write who you want to forgive and put it in the shredder, and you will have forgiven them. And I remember doing it for this person, and I was like, I'd left school and I was still struggling with it. I was still struggling with the confidence, and it all stemmed from that. And I did it. I put this person in a shredder, and I expected this whole thing to be lifted, and I was my confident, happy self. And I wasn't. And I felt like the worst Christian ever. I was like, right, well, God's punishing me for not listening to him for however many years. And he won't allow me to forgive this person, because this pastor, performer, has told me that if I put this person in the shredder, I will forgive them and I will feel better. But I didn't, and that is the truth. And I remember speaking to him about it. I can't remember if it was after or if it was a couple of months or something after. And I was like, I'm really, really struggling to forgive. Mum was like, it's not a physical act. She said, yes, you put it in a shredder, but you didn't give it to God. You just put it in a shredder. She said, you need to give it to God and ask him to help you work through it. So I did. And around that time, she'd messaged me on Facebook. She'd found me on Facebook.
This was a while after, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was a couple of years after. And she'd messaged me on Facebook, and I panicked. I had a panic attack, and I was feeling sick. I was like, she's found me. She's going to find out where I am. She's going to come and get me. And that all happened within the timeline of the forgiving. And once I'd given it to God and I'd said, it's in your hands now. I don't need to worry about this. I don't need to let it affect who I am. That panic went. And a couple of months after that, she came up on my Facebook, and I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel, I need to block her. I didn't feel anything. I just was like, cool.
And do you feel anger?
Nope. I don't feel any anger now. I just, yeah.
So what do you think it was that caused you to allow you to forgive her?
It was God. I know that's the Sunday school answer, but without God and without my faith and family and everything, I'd still hang on to it today. I would make it my identity. And in a sense I do, like I'm involved with the youth at my church, and I've told a few of them, and the other week actually I was speaking on this and how it had affected certain parts of my choices. And I still say I was bullied, but instead of saying, I was bullied, blah, 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 I have allowed it to help me help people, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
And now you can see that as something that you've gone through, that God has allowed you to go through, but brought you through, which you can help other people with. What did forgiving that person do for you?
It just took the fear away, I think. Yeah, it took the fear, because I was very scared, because the bullying that she did was quite intense, and the stalking and the harassment was really intense, and I lived in fear that she would find me and follow out the threats that she used for years. And even when I was thinking about my future, this was before I'd met Matt, I would think, she's going to find me, even though I'm going to change my last name, and she's going to come and kill me, because that was one of the threats that she had. But it's taken that fear, And I've gone from constantly looking over my shoulder and constantly checking my Facebook to make sure I've not got any information on there as to where I am and what I'm doing. And now I'm just like, yeah, it's taken that fear away. I don't have any feelings towards her. There is, well, I say that there is not pity. That's not the word I'm looking for. I'd love to meet her again. I would generally love to meet her again as the person that I am now, and I'd want to ask for her forgiveness rather than anything, and to let her know that I'd forgiven her, because I don't know where she is. I don't know if she'll watch this somehow, and yeah, I'd want to sit down and say, I forgive you. Will you forgive me for whatever I did? That sounds like a big person answer, but it's the truth.
Yeah. So with all you've been through, yeah, all the stuff that happened to you, how can you say you're a Christian? Maybe there's people listening who are thinking, or in a similar situation, who've been bullied, who've gone through something similar to you, the harassment and death threats and all these sorts of things that's gone on. And they might say, how can you say you're a Christian? How can you believe in a God that has let this happen to you? And how have you seen God working through this situation? So firstly, how can you say that you're a Christian? How can you believe in a God if he's allowed this to happen to you?
I don't know. I just know I am. I'm loved by a God that, even though he allowed it to happen, he's brought something... I don't want to cry. He's brought something beautiful out of it. And it's shaped me to who I am now and what I want to do in life. So... Excuse me, I'm having an emotional moment here. I just am. I know that he's got me no matter what. So yeah.
So if you could go back to Beckii in high school,
oh no,
right now, in that situation, what would you say to her?
Well, I'd tell her, one, do not cut your hair into a bob and dye it purple. Okay, that's number one. And number two, I would tell her to get to youth club, to get your Bible out, because your life is going to be amazing. I'm not going to cry. I did a youth camp. I've been doing youth camps for a couple of years with mum and dad, and then our church has got one, and the pastor's wife Elsbeth asked last year if I'd come along, and I was terrified. I said yes, because I don't like saying no to Elsbeth. I was terrified, and I remember the second day in, I cried in one of the meetings, because I just thought, if Beckii in high school could see you now and see you hanging with youths who are terrifying, that age group is scary, she wouldn't believe who I am now. She would pass me and we'd just pass each other in the street, because I have come on because of God giving me the opportunities and giving me the strength. I'd just tell her to just hang in there, but I'd urge her to lean on God more than I did.
You said that you'd get her to pick up a Bible and read it. What is it about the Bible that would help her?
Well, it's God's word, and like when you said, how do you know you're a Christian and God has allowed this to happen? The first thing I thought of was Job. Job, I don't know if any people have read it. Job went through an awful time, and people will say lots of different things, that God was awful for letting it happen. But Job stuck with God. His faith didn't waver at all. And he went through worse than I did. So the Bible has people in the Bible that have gone through what we have gone through, if not worse. And it tells you the stories of those people and how God was there.
And how God was faithful to them in the end.
Yeah.
I think one of the most comforting things as well for yourself and for people in similar situations is that if you're a Christian, if you put your faith in Jesus, then our future is secure.
Mm-hmm.
We have a hope that one day all the sickness, all the illness, all the sin and every bad thing that's happened to us will one day be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that this earth, which is beautiful and amazing but tainted and destroyed, and if we see horrible things happening, will one day be gone. And if you're a Christian, you have a hope that's in the Bible, that's a promise from God. And we know that God doesn't break his promises because it's there in the Bible. Every promise he's made, he's fulfilled.
Yeah.
That one day he'll come and we'll be redeemed, which means we'll be made new, and we won't go through the things that we go through.
We're in the ladies' Bible study. We're doing Esther, and last week we did chapter 2 or 3, and it talked about how Mordecai made Esther go to the king, which I'm not going to go into a whole Bible study, but basically it was a big no-no. She had to be summoned by the king, and in the back of the book is where all the answers are. So I looked at the back of the book, and it said that Mordecai cared more about Esther's eternal situation than he did the earthly consequences, and that has stuck with me since we did it, because yes, we're going to go through an awful time in life. We're told we're going to go through an awful time, but our eternal situation when we die, or if Jesus comes back before we die, it outweighs everything that would happen in a lifetime.
So then, last question for you. What advice would you give to people listening who may be facing a similar situation that you faced?
Age-wise, if you're at home, I'd go to your parents if you can. I'd just not keep it in. Speak about it, which is something I did eventually. But yeah, speaking about it. And the Sunday school answer, which I've already said is harder to do than say, is lean on God. Yeah.
How would they do that?
Well, if you're a Christian, you carve out that quiet time in your day. Again, it's easier said than done. Spend time in his word and give him all of your troubles, everything that that's troubling you. He knows, but tell him. If you're not a Christian, try and seek out someone that is a Christian, or just go to church. I mean, it's all easier said than done. I know that from personal experience, but I would urge anyone to do that.
To reach out. Well, thank you, Beckii.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being brave, and sharing your story of what's happened to you. And there's lots of other things that we could have gone into, lots of other things that happened to yourself. But that's just one aspect of your life, that sort of focus on forgiveness and what forgiveness did for you. So thank you so much for that. If you've enjoyed this podcast, leave a like rating, leave a rating on Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is that you've been listening. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Life Uncovered.